Why should the elderly live independently? Many senior citizens feel that depending on their children is not something to be ashamed of. Before we dive deeper into this topic, I would appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps me continue sharing valuable lessons about aging. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend that you do so and turn on the notification bell so you can stay updated with all my upcoming videos. If you find this video helpful, kindly comment with the number 1. If not, please leave a 0 so I can improve and create better content for you. Now, let's begin. The idea that children should take care of their elderly parents is often seen as a sign of success and capability. It can be a source of pride for a parent to live with their children during old age, as it provides them with security and comfort, knowing that their needs are being met. In this situation, elderly parents don't have to worry about food, health, or daily living expenses. However, relying solely on one's children can also lead to complications and tensions. There are numerous examples of elderly people who, upon depending too much on their children, end up facing unpleasant situations. In many cases, the most ideal situation is for elderly people to maintain a degree of independence. One striking example is Ms. Lon, a 75-year-old woman who suffered a major illness 2 years ago. This experience forced her to confront the reality of her future life in old age, and she made a decision to prioritize certain aspects of her life rather than fully depending on her children. Why does Ms. Lon feel that relying on her children might not be the best option for her in her later years? What aspects of her life does she choose to protect? To answer these questions, let's delve into Ms. Lon's personal story and discover her perspective on this matter. I am now 73 years old and have been a widow for 13 years. My late husband and I had a happy life together. We had 2 sons and 1 daughter, all of whom are well established, with stable jobs and lives in the city. But as is often the case, the good times didn't last forever. 5 years after retiring, my husband tragically died in a car accident. Since that day, I have lived alone in a cold, empty house. I had always felt healthy and independent, and my monthly pension was enough to take care of myself without his support. Ms. Lon begins. After his passing, I received compensation from the person responsible for the accident, 300 million VND, and an additional 200 million VND that my husband had saved over the years. Despite this, I never truly felt at peace. My life, even with the money, felt uncertain. The years ahead stretched out before me, and simply having money didn't seem enough to fill the void. Many elderly people around me suggested that I spend my money on travel, shopping, or even hire a helper, but none of these ideas resonated with me. I felt like my old age should be meaningful, not just about filling time with activities that didn't belong to me. I had always believed that parents should support their children, but it was only when I faced my own challenges that I realized the truth. My children were not as supportive as I had imagined. They were self-centered and sometimes even selfish. After my husband's death, I tried to keep a positive outlook and handle my life cheerfully. Initially, my children arranged a plan for me to stay at each of their houses. 5 months at my eldest son's, 2 months at my daughter's. They reassured me that I could choose to stay as long as I wanted. But over time, I began to realize that this arrangement wasn't as fulfilling as I had hoped. When my children invited me to live with them, promising that it would make my old age more comfortable, I found that it was less pleasant than living alone in my own home. At my eldest son's house, I was treated like a guest by my son-in-law, and at my younger son's house, my daughter-in-law imposed many household chores on me. At first, my eldest son gave me 5 million VND a month for family expenses. But after a while, he began to complain that my pension was too much. and he asked me to contribute more. I agreed to help, as I didn't want to cause any tension. But soon, the amount dropped to 2 million VND and eventually stopped entirely. I found myself in a position where I had to take care of all my expenses. When I moved to my younger son's house, the situation didn't improve. He actually asked me for 200 million VND for an investment project. I was left with no money to give, as I had already spent most of my savings on supporting them and covering living expenses at my elder son's house. My younger son, unhappy that I had no more money to give, pressured me to sell my old house. After all, I only stayed there a few times a year, so the sooner I sold it, the better, he argued. They promised that if I sold the house, we could all share the proceeds and live more comfortably. While my late husband had once suggested selling the house to live with our sons after retirement, I had no intention of parting with it after his death. The house was the product of years of hard work, and it held sentimental value. It was the only place I felt truly at home, and if I sold it, I would be left with nowhere to go for family gatherings. I refused to sell the house, but my younger son and my elder son continued to pressure me. In order to avoid conflict, I eventually told them I only had 200 million VND left, and I gave each of them 50 million to appease them. This temporarily stopped their push for the sale. However, the turning point in my life came when I suffered a stroke 3 years ago. I had fallen, and a kind passerby rushed me to the hospital. My movements became limited, and I was unable to care for myself as I once had. This forced me to face the reality that I could no longer be self-sufficient. After my illness, my children, who once seemed concerned for me, began to neglect me. My son-in-law and even my son treated me like a burden. They complained about having to care for me, which only worsened my condition, despite the doctor advising me to rest and recover. I was constantly scolded at my son's house. Eventually, my children suggested sending me to a nursing home. I wasn't interested in that idea at all. It felt like a prison, with no freedom to go anywhere. That's when I made the decision to return to my hometown, hire a helper, and live on my own terms. My children were initially hesitant, but they reluctantly accepted my decision. Less than a year after returning home, my health improved significantly. I regained the ability to walk. My limbs became more flexible, and I could take care of myself again. Looking back, I realized that not selling my house and not giving away all my money to my children was the right choice. If I had sold my house or depleted my savings, I would have been completely dependent on them, constantly facing complaints and being treated as a burden. If you're still watching this video and finding these lessons helpful, please comment with the number 1 below to let me know you're still here. Thank you for your time. After going through such a serious illness, I learned that it's better for elderly people to protect themselves in the following 5 ways rather than relying on their children. First, maintain good health throughout your life. Second, ensure that you have personal assets and a pension. Third, keep some money and property for yourself. Never give everything away to your children. Fourth, enjoy your life by traveling and relaxing instead of working for your children. Fifth, work hard and rely on yourself, rather than depending on your children, to lead a fulfilling and enjoyable life. These principles not only helped me live a fulfilling old age, but also allowed my children to feel more at ease. Living with children didn't bring me happiness. Living alone in my own home allowed me to preserve my dignity and enjoy my life. So, if you're still young, it's better to focus on building your own life and gaining experiences. But if you're already older, living independently can be a rewarding choice. It gives your life meaning and allows you to retain control over it. In old age, having financial independence is powerful. If you have assets, you should use them for yourself and prepare a will for the future inheritance. It's not wise to give everything to your children while you're still alive. There are instances when elderly parents, before passing away, decide to transfer ownership of their homes to their children, only to end up living as tenants in their own houses. This scenario highlights the importance of planning for the later years of life and ensuring a secure and comfortable retirement. As we approach old age, it becomes essential to create a fallback plan, as our assets should serve as a means to support our well-being during retirement. For seniors, transferring assets to children before passing away is often a mistake. While this gesture may be made out of love or a sense of duty, it places the elderly person in a vulnerable and passive position. By transferring their wealth prematurely, parents not only risk their assets being squandered by their children, but also deprive themselves of the financial independence necessary to cover their own retirement needs. Wise individuals, therefore, tend to pass on their assets only when they are nearing the end of their lives, ensuring that their children do not waste their wealth while also safeguarding enough resources for their retirement. This thoughtful approach helps maintain financial stability, ensuring that the elderly are not left without the means to support themselves in their final years. Moreover, if children are ungrateful, it is only when parents retain their assets that children may truly learn to respect and appreciate them. In many families with multiple children, the elderly often express that their lives have been dedicated to supporting their offspring, often sacrificing their own financial stability in the process. They work hard throughout their lives to provide for their children, leaving nothing behind for their own future security. In wealthier families, children may expect a more substantial inheritance, and some may only show care for their parents in hopes of receiving more financial benefits. However, the sad reality is that many of these children do not genuinely want to honor or care for their aging parents. They are motivated by self-interest rather than love. To ensure a peaceful and secure old age, it is crucial for seniors to retain their assets to meet their living expenses. By doing so, they avoid becoming dependent on ungrateful children who may not fully appreciate the sacrifices made by their parents. Retaining wealth also offers a measure of dignity and control, allowing the elderly to maintain their independence in the later years of life. The second important consideration for retirees is to avoid living with their children, as this can often lead to unresolved conflicts and feelings of discomfort. Take, for example, the story of Ms. Min, a nearly 70-year-old woman who should be enjoying her retirement years peacefully under the care of her children. Unfortunately, her situation reflects the harsh reality faced by many elderly parents. Ms. Min has 4 sons and 2 daughters, and in her younger years, she worked tirelessly to raise them. Yet, as she ages, none of her sons is willing to provide long-term support. They take turns caring for her, but none of them are fully committed, each reluctant to take on the full responsibility. In one instance, Ms. Min was bitten by a dog while staying with her eldest son, leading her to stay with him for a few days. However, her presence was unwelcome, and she was eventually moved to the homes of her second and third sons. But each time, she faced discomfort and dissatisfaction. When living with her sons, she found herself constantly adjusting to their wives' preferences and feeling out of place. Despite her deep love for her children, petty jealousy and unresolved issues between her children left her feeling emotionally exhausted. Ms. Min's 2 daughters, who love her dearly, have made numerous attempts to bring her into their homes, but their efforts have been blocked by the sons, who are afraid of social stigma. The sons, focused on maintaining their family reputation, keep their mother under their roof despite the obvious discomfort and lack of genuine care. This situation has left Ms. Min in a difficult position, unwilling to move to a retirement home out of fear that it would be seen as ungratefulness. However, at 70, Ms. Min realizes that living with any of her children is no longer a viable option. Her reluctance to enter a retirement home stems not just from pride, but from a deep-seated fear of being seen as a burden. The truth, however, is that living under one roof with children and their families often leads to tension. The differing values, lifestyles, and routines of different generations can create friction, and maintaining healthy boundaries is crucial. Rather than fostering gratitude and appreciation, living with children can lead to resentment and unmet expectations. For a peaceful retirement, the elderly should refrain from living with their children. While the intent may be to help or stay close, the outcome often results in dissatisfaction. A better alternative is for seniors to visit their children occasionally and offer support when necessary, but to maintain their independence and not move in permanently. This approach preserves both familial harmony and personal dignity. The third piece of advice is to avoid exhausting yourself working for your children. In today's world, many retirees continue working beyond their official retirement years in order to help support their children or pay off debts. Some parents, instead of focusing on their own health and well-being, take on extra household chores and responsibilities to ease their children's burdens. This is a grave mistake. After retirement, it is unreasonable and unhealthy for the elderly to continue overexerting themselves. The primary focus during retirement should be on maintaining good health and enjoying life. Working excessively in old age can lead to physical and emotional strain, and ultimately, it may harm both the elderly person and their children. Health problems are an inevitable part of aging, and when seniors sacrifice their well-being to work, they risk creating more problems for both themselves and their families. The elderly should prioritize self-care, exercise, and relaxation to maintain good health. The money earned through extra work may not be enough to cover medical expenses if health deteriorates. Rather than overexerting themselves, seniors should focus on enjoying their retirement, maintaining their health, and seeking happiness through a balanced lifestyle. Finally, consider the following story. "I will live well, Mom," says the daughter, as she straightens her clothes, applies lipstick, and twirls in front of the mirror. Her mother, with a gentle smile, remarks, "You look beautiful, but the neckline is too deep." The daughter laughs and replies, "It's no longer the old times, Mom." The mother says nothing more and goes to the kitchen to prepare lunch. The daughter follows her, taking the watermelon slices her mother has already prepared, and teases, "Aren't you afraid of smearing your lipstick?" She adds with a grin, "The lipstick was a gift from Thailand. It's so well made, Mom." The mother is momentarily taken aback, surprised by her daughter's words. "Really?" she asks. The daughter kisses her mother on the cheek and says, "I'm going now, Mom." As the daughter leaves, her mother watches her go. The daughter has grown into a woman who resembles her mother, but with her own sense of style and beauty. She has a good job, a high income, and enjoys a modern lifestyle filled with shopping and eating out. Each time she visits, she brings her mother gifts, new clothes, cosmetics, or fashion items. However, the clothes often don't fit her mother, and the fabric for the new outfits is usually too short. Nevertheless, the mother appreciates the thought behind it, understanding that her daughter's intention is to make her look beautiful. Just like when she was young, the daughter has become more independent, and over time, she has visited her mother less frequently. It has been a month since her last visit, and her mother, now retired, spends most of her time alone. She keeps busy with housework, gardening, cooking, and taking care of herself. Occasionally, when she feels exhausted or down, she sits by the creek, propping her knees on a hill, gazing at the clouds. lost in thought. Despite the occasional loneliness, she finds solace in the memories of her younger days and the love her children gave her. This story serves as a reminder that the elderly, after retirement, must prioritize their own well-being, maintain their dignity, and ensure they have the resources to live their final years in peace. The key is to balance love and independence, to maintain healthy relationships with children, and to plan ahead for a fulfilling and secure retirement. Her daughter is still living, still thriving, and most importantly, still cherishes her mother deeply. This month, however, her daughter has been preoccupied with a new job that has consumed much of her time. As a result, she hasn't had the chance to return home for a visit. Her mother, being considerate of her busy schedule, doesn't want to burden her with requests or demands. Instead, she receives small tokens of affection each week from her daughter: health supplements to keep her strong, fresh fruits to nourish her, and even a new outfit, each item carefully selected. Her daughter's thoughtful gestures speak volumes, as they allow her mother to feel remembered and loved despite the distance. Occasionally, the daughter also sends her some homemade sweets when she returns, a sweet touch that the mother always looks forward to. Her mother knows, deep down, that her daughter's visits will come, and she anticipates them with eager hope, believing that each visit might bring more little gifts as well. When the daughter finally arrives, she embraces her mother warmly and says, "Mom, let me lie down for a bit. Okay, later we can have dinner together. I love you so much." Her voice is gentle, but there's an underlying tiredness. Her mother, always attentive, asks, "Are you tired from school?" But the daughter remains silent, perhaps not wanting to reveal the exhaustion she feels. The mother, sensing the strain in her daughter, suggests, "Let's lie down together." Lying together, the daughter rests her head on her mother's arm. "Mom, you've lost so much weight," she observes, her voice filled with concern. The daughter hugs her mother tightly, her arms wrapping around her with the warmth of love and care. Then, almost absent-mindedly, she brings her hand to her lips and lightly bites it, leaving behind a faint mark that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. In that moment, the daughter reassures herself that her mother, though aging, still retains her youthful glow, her beauty untainted by time. This reflection, influenced by external ideas of beauty and youth, brings comfort to the daughter, as the daughter sips the hot ginger water her mother had made for her the night before. She remembers how much she has always enjoyed it. The warmth of the ginger is not only comforting to her body, but also reminds her of the days spent at home. Her mother's care filling every corner of the house. The mother had soaked the ginger beforehand and carefully prepared it for her daughter, knowing that it would help her stay healthy. Each day after school, the daughter would come home and drink the ginger water. But today, a small amount remains in the glass. The mother, not wanting to waste it, decides to turn it into ginger jam, sweetened with sugar, a small act of resourcefulness. Later, while the jam cools in the sieve, the daughter sneaks into the kitchen, her appetite getting the better of her. She eats the jam with her hands, the noise of her chewing filling the room like a child indulging in a sweet treat. Playfully, she asks, "Is it delicious, Mom?" Spicy, sweet, bitter like life. Her mother, always mindful of order, gently reprimands her, saying, "Who taught you to speak like that? My child? At your age, you should know better." The daughter, ever irreverent, dismisses the old clothes her mother keeps. These are clothes she had worn years ago, some of them too small now, but the mother carefully collects the buttons, storing them in a box in case they could be used again in the future. The way you hold on to these old things. It's silly, Mom, the daughter remarks, unable to understand her mother's attachment to things that seem irrelevant. But her mother simply replies, "Being wasteful is a sin." The daughter laughs, lightly teasing, "If you speak like that, many people would have long been punished by now." At that, the mother looks shocked, her expression one of confusion. "Why do you talk like that, child?" she asks, perplexed. But the daughter remains silent, lost in her thoughts. In her mind, she is reflecting on the corruption she hears about in the world, officials who misuse state resources, living lavishly while others suffer. She wonders, why hasn't heaven punished them yet? There is a small wooden box in the room, one that has been a constant presence in the family home for as long as the daughter can remember. It's glossy from years of careful handling, and it's always locked. Her mother has always warned her not to touch it, saying that it would be hers one day, when the time was right. Despite her curiosity, the daughter respected the box, and over time, she stopped trying to open it, accepting her mother's wishes. That morning, as the daughter prepares to leave for school, the mother asks, as she always does, "Will you be home for dinner today?" On most days, the daughter, preoccupied and perhaps frustrated by the rush, would answer curtly, "I don't know yet." But on this day, something in her mother's eyes catches her attention, an unspoken plea for her to return. Sighing, the daughter replies, "I'll come back. Remember to cook rice and tomato soup with meat stuffing. I'm craving it." Her mother, pleased by the response, smiles and says, "Okay, I'll cook, and I'll also prepare some bread for you. Don't eat from the street vendors. It's expensive and unsanitary." With that, the daughter hurries off, but for some reason, she can't shake the feeling of unease that lingers. Throughout the day, she watches the clock, waiting for the moment when she can leave. Finally, when her final exam preparations are over, she rushes home. On her way, she sees a flower vendor selling fresh roses and buys a few, intending to surprise her mother with them. However, when she arrives home, things are not as she expected. The house is quiet. Her mother, who would usually be waiting at the door to greet her, is nowhere to be seen. In a panic, the daughter rushes to the kitchen. The rice cooker is off, and the stuffed tomatoes are still warm on the stove, indicating that her mother had just finished cooking. A cup of hot ginger water sits on the table, alongside the spicy ginger she had made. But her mother is nowhere in sight. "Mom, where are you?" The daughter calls out anxiously. She runs into the bedroom, and there, to her horror, she finds her mother lying on the bed. She tries to wake her, but her mother is unresponsive, her hand growing cold and stiff. In a state of panic, the daughter calls for an ambulance, but by the time they arrive, it's too late. The doctor tells her that her mother's blood pressure had spiked suddenly, and it was too late to save her. The daughter faints, unable to comprehend what has just happened. Her mother had been fine, healthy even, just hours earlier. She had been cooking for her, preparing the very meal she had craved. But now, everything has changed. When her father and younger sibling arrive, they take her home. She can barely walk, her body heavy with grief. As she enters her mother's room, she sees the wooden box again. Without thinking, she takes it, not allowing anyone else to touch it. It's unlike her to act this way, but the box feels like the last piece of her mother she can hold on to. She searches for the key, opens the box, and inside, she finds a pink knitted scarf, one her mother had made years ago. It had always seemed old-fashioned to the daughter, so she had never worn it. Beneath it is a child's knitted sweater, one the daughter had worn when she was much younger, carefully folded with her name embroidered on it. There's also a notebook with her early writing, clumsy, childish handwriting from her first grade days. And then, at the bottom of the box, she finds a golden necklace, and beside it, a neatly written note that reads, "Dowry for my daughter." All of these things, the scarf, the sweater, the notebook, are the legacy her mother had left behind. The daughter, in her younger years, had mocked the wooden box and the memories it contained. But now, she realizes that this box holds not only the difficult past of their family, but also her own childhood. Full of love, sacrifice, and care, she swallows her tears and whispers softly to her mother, "I will live well. Mom, I promise." Caring for elderly or ill parents is never easy. It requires a strength that many people can't fathom, a strength that comes from love, patience, and the understanding that our parents grow old with us. Taking care of and honoring them is one of the most profound ways to repay them for all they've given us. Even if we can't do everything perfectly, we should always strive to do what we can to make their lives as comfortable and peaceful as possible. Thank you for joining us in exploring these deep and meaningful reflections on managing life in our later years. From understanding the importance of wisely handling our assets to recognizing the need for personal space and maintaining our health, we've touched on key aspects of enjoying a fulfilling and peaceful old age. We would love to hear from you. What lessons have you learned from today's discussion? Please share one key takeaway that you plan to implement in your own life. Your thoughts and experiences are invaluable to us, so feel free to leave a comment below this video. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to leave your comments. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue to create content that inspires and guides us. Thank you for being part of our community.